discussion, which meeting is being recorded. The previous panel focused on understanding autism and sensitizing the public to the difficulties facing parents of autistic children and the struggle of our education system to provide the necessary support for children with varying needs. In this panel, we would like to take the discussion a step forward by focusing on the practical aspect of supporting the social integration and personalized learning and development of children with autism. The format of the discussion is as follows. First, we will have a brief introduction of HAPA, its objectives, work, and achievements. And this will be done by HAPA's president, Dr. Delia Samuel. Next, we will hear from tonight's panelists who will be introduced in turn to present some of their information and views on the topic with particular emphasis on 4 key considerations. What are some of the practical things that are necessary to enable a truly supportive environment in schools for children with autism? How can we make school life a more engaging and interactive experience for these children? How would we describe a truly integrative experience for children with autism, as well as for their peers, their teachers, and their parents? What kind of partnerships between school and community might facilitate the objectives of integration and support for children, teachers, and parents? Then, following the remarks by our panelists, we hope to expand and explore the ideas emanating from their presentations by way of interactions with you, the audience, who will assist us by providing depth and scope to this very important topic. So I invite you to put your questions, suggestions, comments in the chat or in the Q&A box throughout the session, so we can interact easily and make the best use of the time that we have. And we only have an hour and a half. Okay, so let us begin with Dr. Samuel. Delia D. Samuel, PhD, is the president of the Helen Association for Persons with Autism, HAPA. Her path to founding this organization was deeply personal, beginning with the birth of her 2 sons, both diagnosed with autism around the age of 3. Through their lives, they have remained her greatest teachers, guiding her along a journey that, while challenging, has also been profoundly meaningful and rewarding. Over the past 2 decades, she has faced daily obstacles, yet through resilience and determination, she has continually risen above them. In 2014, after reaching a place of acceptance and clarity of purpose, Dr. Samuel wrote a book recounting her experiences. In it, she offered encouragement to parents and caregivers, emphasizing that even when circumstances feel overwhelming, triumph is possible. This realization inspired her to give back to Saint Lucia, and in October 2015, she organized the island's first Autism Awareness Conference, an event that marked the beginning of HAPA. Through HAPA, Dr. Samuel is committed to fostering acceptance, promoting inclusion, educating communities, and empowering families to thrive alongside autism. Her work reflects her belief that what once seemed impossible can in fact be achieved. A mathematics professor by profession, Dr. Samuel lives in Minnesota with her sons. In August 2021, she herself was diagnosed with autism, adding a new dimension to her journey and her advocacy. So I call on Dr. Samuel to give an introduction to HAPA and a brief update on the organization's work and achievements thus far to get us going with our panel this evening. Welcome, Dr. Samuel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simon, and it is my pleasure to be here. The Helen Association for Persons with Autism, also known as HAPA, is a non-profit, non-governmental organization in Saint Lucia dedicated to promoting autism awareness and supporting autistic individuals and their families. Established in 2015 and formally registered in 2023, HAPA works to transform communities through education, advocacy, and inclusive initiatives that foster understanding, acceptance, and opportunity. HAPA's core objectives include raising awareness and acceptance of autism, providing support and resources to families, educating parents, and the wider community, educating educators on effective strategies for supporting autistic individuals and creating opportunities for growth and development. The organization actively carries out its mission through workshops, school outreach, public awareness campaigns, and community-based programs. Some achievements include the launch of the Sponsor Parent Program, which provides financial assistance to families, as well as the delivery of training sessions on topics such as speech and language support, individualized education plans or IEPs, and caregiver well-being. This year, as part of its observance of Autism Month, HAPA hosts a range of impactful activities designed to raise awareness and promote inclusion. These include the celebration of World Autism Awareness Day through the Light It Up Blue campaign, a sensory-friendly health fair which was just held on Saturday, which provided accessible healthcare services. Of course, this panel discussion, a fun sports day which will be held on Saturday for autistic individuals at the Philip Marsley grounds, and a panel discussion which will be next Thursday with minibus and taxi drivers aimed at fostering inclusion in public transportation. HAPA has also engaged businesses to promote autism awareness within their organizations throughout the month. In addition, HAPA has expanded its public education efforts through the creation of educational videos that aim to increase awareness, address misconceptions, and provide practical guidelines on supporting autistic individuals. Through these initiatives, HAPA continues to advocate for a more inclusive society where autistic individuals are valued, supported, and empowered to reach their full potential in keeping with its slogan, embracing uniqueness, unlocking potential.
Thank you, Dr. Samuel, for that concise but very rich with information introduction and to HAPA and its activities. I must say that I am very excited about the direction that the organization is taking and the number of engaging activities that have been taking place in very quick succession. And I think we owe a lot of that to your enthusiasm. That indefatigable drive and energy is very difficult to match. And when I think that when I taught you many years ago, you were such a quiet and shy little girl who was not always keen to speak out. And now I see that drive that you have, the force with which you have approached this task. And it's a task that is sorely needed. And we are hoping that we can keep that momentum going in Saint Lucia with the help of some of the people who are on this very panel. And so we will move on to our first panelist, Mrs. Melka Daniel, who is a seasoned educator and school principal with over 25 years of experience in special education. She has worked extensively with children on the autism spectrum, championing inclusive practices that promote meaningful participation and holistic support within school environments. Alongside her dedicated team at the Viewfort Special Education Center, she has been a strong advocate for inclusive programming that spans music, sports, academics, the arts, vocational skills training, adaptive living skills, and a range of functional and leisure activities for students. She has also represented special education and inclusion in several national and regional projects and programs, reflecting her strong commitment to advancing inclusive education. Over to you, Ms. Daniel.
You're muted.
You're muted. Again.
My apologies. Blessed evening, everyone. Thank you so very much. It is a pleasure to be a panelist speaking on a topic that I am quite passionate about, something that I've advocated or I'm still advocating on for many reasons. And I'm hoping, like you said, that there is some action, because for me, my slogan is from awareness to acceptance and action. All right. To begin with, I just want to say that this topic, autism integration support in schools, it lends itself mostly to the need for it to be intentional. When we look at what is happening currently in our systems, in our education system, in Saint Lucia, and even around the world, it is no doubt that whenever we speak of integration, whenever we speak of support or inclusion, the idea is that it cannot simply be placement. It has to be one that is intentional, where there are specific systems in place. There are particular designs in that you do not create the child, or you do not force a child to fit within a system, but rather you design the system to fit the child. Okay, we look at various policies from the ministerial perspective all the way down to school policies and even the community and the public as well. We're looking at things like capacity building, our staff, our various persons. And many times we tend to believe that we are not the experts, that we need several paraprofessionals like our speech therapists, occupational therapists, and a whole host of persons to actually have inclusion. And this is not necessarily so. I am sure you will agree, and even by the end of this evening, that you're already doing so much. And then there is so much that's already happening, even here in St. Lucia, in our schools, even without those paraprofessionals. Notwithstanding, of course, they'll make the job a lot easier, and they'll provide a more sense of direction as to how we go or we progress. But still, we are the experts. You are the experts. And so we want to know how we can lend from your expertise and create an environment that is inclusive, one that is intentional for all of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel, for opening remarks and for providing a perspective and wealth of experience that you have gained over your more than 25 years in the field of special education. And I want to phrase this as quarter of a century to
Yes,
emphasize that contribution, because it's a long time, and it means that you have acquired a significant amount of experience and insight into the issues that we are facing. And yes, we will come back to you with questions that are pertinent to some of the things you said. I would like to remind the audience to please put any questions, comments arising from Ms. Daniel's first remarks into the chat or the Q&A so that we can proceed seamlessly. Thanks again. Our next presenter is Ms. Jalyn Charles, who is a special education needs SEN teacher at the Viewfort Comprehensive Secondary School, where she has taught modern foreign languages for 10 years. Prior to this, she worked as a special education needs teacher at a Montessori center. Ms. Charles pursued a bachelor's degree in special education in Cuba, where she completed 5 years of practicum, working with children with a range of special education needs, including autism. During her studies in Cuba, she was also recognized for her skill and innovation in developing classroom activities to support individualized education plans known as IEPs. She's passionate about inclusive education and supporting effective integration for students with autism in school environments. Welcome, Ms. Charles, and over to you.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone who is on the meeting. As a special educational needs teacher who has both experience in mainstream as well as special educational needs schools, I'm of the opinion that I share the opinion of Ms. Daniel that we're not going to work towards making a child with autism fit into the spaces that they're going to be interacting and learning. Rather, we are going to create the space where they can thrive. And in order to do so, which is the true essence of inclusion, there are key stakeholders and resources that are necessary. So, for instance, a child who has had the support of his special educational needs teacher in a primary school who is transitioning to a secondary school, for instance, where I work at the Viewfort Comprehensive Secondary School, will need the continuation of what has started in his primary school. And having the experience in a primary school, teaching in a primary school, a Montessori center, which is very different from our public school, the environment is different, the workload is different. So there is a need for training for our teachers who will have these students coming into the environment where most of the students are neurotypical. And what is very important with working with a child with autism is understanding autism. Most persons, they feel, like me said, that they are not equipped, they are not the professionals, they have not done the studying. But I find that once we understand, we have information, we now have more patience, because understanding brings light. It makes you feel empowered to work with the students with autism. So during this panel discussion, I hope to share some practical things that we are already doing and what else we could add to our environment that already exists to include our students who are coming from the primary school with a diagnosis of being on the spectrum. I would also like to add that when we cater to students who are on the spectrum, everyone benefits. The other students in your classroom will benefit from the resources you are going to use. Teachers, the adults in the environment will also develop empathy. They will grow. You will grow as a person. The community becomes more involved, and the village that every child needs, we will see it manifesting, and we'll reap the rewards of everyone working in a collaborative effort, not just for the child with autism, but for every child within our classroom. Thank you.
And thank you. Please feel free to put your clapping emoticons in the to keep the session interactive. And thank you, Ms. Charles, for throwing some light on what is possible in providing robust support to our children, regardless of the nature of their individual needs. And this should serve as an inspiration to those who may be inclined to give up before considering the wealth of possibilities that actually currently exist. And again, I remind the audience to put your questions, comments in the chat or in the Q&A if you have any comments arising from Charles's presentation. Yeah, are they doing this?
There is a question, Dr. Simon. Do you want me to read it out?
I wanted all the panelists to make their initial presentations first, and then we will start doing the engaging.
Okay, Dr. Simon.
Okay, all right. So let us move on to our next panelist, Ms. Kajana James, who has served as principal of Auger Combined School for the last 15 years. Ms. James holds a bachelor's degree in educational administration and a Master's of Science degree in special education for the general classroom setting from grade K to grade 8. She's passionate about education and the holistic development of children and describes her main career focus as providing opportunities which allow for individual student success. A warm welcome, Ms. James, and over to you for your first remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on this evening's panel. My perspective is a bit different. So whereas Mrs. Daniel, her focus has been primarily in special education over the last 20 or half of a century, call it that, 25 years, call it that. We have Ms. Charles, who's working directly with the students at the secondary school. My setting is different in that we get two trajectories that present itself. Number one, we get students whose parents would have completed that process from CDGC, and the child is already coming in with a diagnosis. So yes, you know, okay, when you have registration from the fold, you probably have 2 or 3 autistic children, so you begin planning for them. And then you have these other children who people would just say they are presenting with behavioral issues, and nothing has been done really to examine and to see why they are behaving this way. And so in our school setting, we have to create a balance where we ensure that every child is treated equally, that children are not stigmatized. Now, in our regular education setting, we have two opposites. Well, you would have the students who would leave for face-to-face instruction with the special needs teacher. So my school has a special needs teacher. So that child would meet with the teacher at least 3 times a week and get that individualized attention at their level. But then you also have the rest of the day where a child who comes in with a diagnosis or who does not have a diagnosis, that child has to interact with the regular classroom setting. Some of the barriers that we face would be one where, in order for us to ensure that these children are reached, these children are not left to feel like they are different, because someone from the outside, and I've heard it, people say that these children are troublesome or they're ill-mannered, but they would not understand that they are having a meltdown. So education goes a long way in terms of how we accept children who are autistic. In creating a space where a child feels welcome, when we look at our regular classroom setting, it calls for imagination, because you getting ready to to take in a set of students, and you have that classroom space. Set four walls. You have a child who's autistic. So the teacher now has to reimagine what instruction is going to be for that child, and to create the safe spaces and the centers that is going to allow that child to thrive. Additionally, it is one where, like Ms. Charles mentioned, the village has to be on board. So everyone needs to know that this child is autistic. At some point in time, whilst the other children are in class, you might just get this child who's going to run out. So it takes the entire village who is going to look out for that child, who will know how to interact with that child, how to speak with them, what language to use, the body language that needs to be mirrored to ensure that that child is safe. Where are we? From my perspective, we have quite a bit to do in terms of getting to that environment, because not everyone is sensitive towards parents with autistic children. And it takes a lot of retooling. It takes a lot of relearning. It takes a lot of soul searching, because we are educators, and one goal is to ensure that every child learns. Mm-hmm. So we have to ensure that as much as possible, we put into practice everything new, everything old. We dialogue, we collaborate. You have those PLCs to ensure that at the end of the day, a child who is autistic is able to move from point A to point B, even if it's just for their entire academic year, but to allow that child to experience success. So that's my opening statement. I know that it was loaded, but I rest here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And oh, sorry. Sorry, my screen went blank for a minute. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. James. And I know it was loaded, but I think that's a good thing, because it means that we have a lot to unpack in the ensuing discussion. And I already see some comments and questions coming into the chat. So it means that we're already generating a lot of food for thought and for further interaction. So that's a good thing. We appreciate that broad viewpoint that you brought from the perspective of inclusivity in a general education setting. So that was useful. Okay, audience, keep putting your questions, comments in the chat. And we have now heard from our education professionals, and we come to the parent on the panel. Mrs. Claret Ogis-Taylor is a recent retiree, having been a career banker for most of her adult years. In her early years, she was an avid sports enthusiast and represented Saint Lucia at the national level in track and field, netball, volleyball, and basketball. So this is obviously an engaged individual. Claret and her husband, Royston Taylor, are the parents of two boys, the first of whom has autism. She has a wealth of experience with all of the related issues since her son is now 27 years old. She's been in this a long time. In an effort to ensure that her son lives the best life that he could, Claret played an integral role in establishing the first ever school for children with autism. Unfortunately, without the necessary governmental support and funding, the school eventually closed down. Nonetheless, she remains steadfast in her commitment to help others navigate the path for people with autism. And in this regard, she's a member of HAPA and also a member of Island Voices for Autism, which is a support group for parents with neurodivergent children. Over to you, Mrs. Ogis-Taylor.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to sit on this esteemed panel. Let me say that autism is my life. I have lived it every day for the last 27 years. And I started at a time when nobody knew about autism. It was relatively new. So we had a lot of challenges. In terms of what we have down to discuss in terms of the practical things that I see that could be instituted in schools to help children, I think that ensuring, well, first of all, let me say that I welcome the government's recent budget inclusion of $17 million for for people with disabilities. That's what I think they called it at the time, for special education, I suppose. So I welcome that. As for our specific cause, autism, what things I would like to see, I would like to see that inclusion in our schools by providing the necessary resources, such as special ed teachers in every school. Every school should have trained special ed teachers, teachers in neurodiversity, that is. I would like to see that every child has an IEP. We've already established that it's what it is, an individualized educational plan. Miss Charles articulated a lot of what I would like to see. And so I will also talk about for a little bit about the adult, the autistic adult child, person. I would like to see sensory-friendly environments, the classrooms being sensory-friendly, so that children are not intimidated and they can feel welcomed. I would like to see that that there are structured routines, so that that would reduce the anxiety that the autistic child feels. You know, if you have, because that is what they are accustomed to, and they like structure. So if they have structured routines, it makes them feel less anxious. I would like to see social and emotional support. When both my sons went to Tapio private school, and Rashad had when he was in kindergarten, he had what we call a buddy. So a grade 6 child acted as his buddy. And so when we dropped him off on a morning, he went to his buddy. I would like to see that sort of social and emotional support provided in schools, where there's a buddy system with the older kids providing that sort of support. What that also does is that it helps with relationships and helping those children who are not neurodivergent understand those children a little better. So that would be a good place to jump off. I would like to also see the teaching of structured social skills, so that they would foster inclusive relationships, flexible teaching. Again, I'm going to practical examples. Rashad went to Grosile Secondary School for 2 years, and in that time, he could not follow the curriculum. And I have to say thanks to Mr. Dale Segis and to Mrs. Bryce. They worked along with the Ministry of Education to have that happen. So Rashad could not follow the proper curriculum. And so he had a flexible schedule. So he did what he could do. So he did agriculture, he did physical education, he did IT, he did music, he did, I'm forgetting, the two of them I'm forgetting, but so his schedule was flexible. He did what he could do. and was not forced to sit in a math class, which he would not have been able to do. I would like to see. Okay, so one of the things when Rashad went to school, I paid for an aide to go to school with him. A practical thing I would like to see done is that the government provides teaching aids for those children. What would happen is that that would provide interventions and workable interventions for those children. So they're not on sitting on their own trying to figure it out on their own, even if there's a teacher in the class, but with those teaching aids. And that is very practical in much the same way that we have the NICE program that provides for the home health. And so we could have a structured teaching aid program as part of the NICE program to go to school with the children. I would like to see specialized programs. I think Ms. Charles spoke about it, where the children's unique learning needs are met. So you meet the children at their level and not expect them to jump into a program. I think I kind of said so. And as the children transition into adolescence, key to their development is the provision of the right educational support for them. And this could include vocational training programs and and very importantly, customized support for them. So these vocational programs, I think, could look at job-specific skills. You're gearing them for the work market now. So you look at the social interaction abilities. You want to make them to be independent, so that they can live independently at some point. So you provide, even if it's just learning to take the bus, practical skills that they can use. So and that would create a pathway towards successful, gainful employment. I would, my list is a little long, Dr. Simon. I would like to have, when my son went to school, I would have liked to have seen a tailored program, which, in his youth, which would have prepared him for the world. So some of the programs could include personal care. It could include household responsibilities, just minor money management, just small things that could help them be independent livers, live independently. I'd like to see skills development where there's a focus on practical and interpersonal skills. I think I said that, and community inclusion. I think we spoke about that in the heading. Where young adults, I think, are encouraged to, I would like to see where young adults are encouraged to engage with their peers in the community, in community activities, so that would foster social relationships and they don't feel isolated. They don't feel stigmatized. They feel like they're included. So I envisage that could be done by using one-on-one mentoring programs. You could have people come in and do one-on-one mentoring programs. You could have training workshops. You could have social skill groups. There are various ways that you could include the community. I remember, again, I'm going to go back to a practical example. When Rashad was at Rosalie Secondary School, because of this inclusion, he felt so confident that he put himself up to be the president of one of the committees. That's how confident. And before that, Rashad would not have done that. So I think that even when they did their marathon, they had the community come in. So you had people come in from the community to run alongside certain individuals. I ran alongside my son. Until when he got to the end, and I let him go through. So so the goal is really to empower the young adults, Ms. Charles's group of people, with to lead independent, fulfilling lives using their individual unique strengths, their challenges, and their hopes and their dreams. You have to incorporate their hopes and their dreams as well. I know that some people do not believe that inclusion is the best way to go. They think that there should be specialized schools, and that may work for some. But what I saw with my son and the 2 years he spent at Groseley, unfortunately, the program came to an end when the Groseley school became the school for, became the sporting academy. I believe that inclusion is very, very important. I think that inclusion allows the children to grow and develop and to form certain bonds that go beyond school life. It goes into their adulthood. My son now has a little group of friends, and they go out. To they go out for pizza, they go out for, so he's formed a bond, and even some of his schoolmates, when he sees them, he recognizes them and he stops and they have conversations. So I think in that way the community can come in, the community could the young adults could be given job training at the gas station, and I don't know, at the various business houses. That's how the community can be part of it. So that's really my contribution for now.
Thank you, Claret, for your usual very comprehensive and passionate contribution. And I understand that entirely, because you have walked the walk, you have lived it, and you've shared your considerable experience and the significant insights that you have gained through having been in the trenches, so to speak. And you've been fighting not only for your son, but for the right of all of our children to realize their full potential through the encouragement and facilitation of their unique strengths. And that is something that I think we often miss, the importance of promoting independent living. We are not just taking care of them. I think a lot of people tend to see their role in the life of an autistic child as a caretaking role. But it's more than caretaking. It's a preparatory role. It's getting them ready to be as independent as they can. And of course, we have a spectrum. So we have a range of capabilities and so on, but we have to determine how far each individual can go, as opposed to a blanket approach where, okay, this is for autistic kids, forgetting that like any other children, they have their individual characteristics, their individual capabilities and so on, and we have to respect and facilitate that. Now, okay, so thank you, Claret, and we're going to now engage in more discussion with our audience. I know that people were probably a bit excited about the mention of $17 million from the government for people with disabilities, but it's not as much as it sounds. You're talking about disabilities cover a very wide spectrum. And I was wondering, because it just struck me, triggered, how do we ensure that there is a clear delineation in this budget for autistic individuals? Because yes, it finally, you know, we're getting some recognition that money has to be allocated, but you're dealing with a specific need that covers a broad range of neurodivergent individuals. It's not a physical disability, so you can't cost, for example, we need two sets of whatever, wheelchairs, or we need 2 sets of crutches, etc. So how do we approach this? How do we break it down so that there's an awareness that autism itself has a variety of varying needs within the spectrum, and has that been taken into account? when we are budgeting. So I think, Clara, you were the one who mentioned the 17 million. I don't know if you know if there's been anything further in terms of, you know, how that breakdown would happen. Or
Okay, so
Delia, as president of HAPA, I don't know if anything was said to you in this regard.
So I one of the things that I do know is that there's been a lot more attention being paid to our community, our autistic community. That has been and that has been because we have been at various levels. We have been knocking on the door as to how we ensure that we receive at least a generous piece of that pie. That would have to be determined by sitting down with there is now a ministry for persons with disabilities. We didn't have that before. So we with organizations like HAPA and Island Voices for Autism need to sit down with the minister and claim our share of that pie. I know that there's been talk of a special needs school in Beaufort. I'm not sure how that came up, but there's been talk about that. So I think really and truly we need to stand up and be heard. We need to determine how much of that $17 million that we are going to get. Yes, there is an umbrella body for persons with disabilities, but very often I find when that umbrella body speaks, it speaks to physical disabilities and not to our particular problem. And if it is that we are going to leave it up to that umbrella body to determine what we are going to get, I am not so sure that we will get that fair share. So I think we now need to stand up and be counted and make our voices heard and determine what we are going to get out of that pie.
Yes.
And we cannot wait too long because the allocation is already there.
Yes, and it's probably it's going to be used up pretty quickly. I'm thinking, for example, Delia, of the kind of technology that allows a non-verbal autistic child to be able to communicate emotions and so on, you know, through what is something like a tablet or something that they use, where that child is not locked in. Because sometimes people think that the child just isn't there. The child is there. He's there, that he or she is there, locked in with all the emotions and everything going on inside that goes on inside of any other child. But the brain is not collaborating and cooperating and enabling these things to come out. And I know that there's the technology that assists at least to let them get their emotions, to be able to communicate something. It's expensive. I see Jalin is asking to speak to this.
Okay, so like I said, I'm at a secondary school, a mainstream secondary school, and I have had the experience at a special educational needs school. And the comparison that I make, having had both experiences, is that yes, we want to include the students who are on the spectrum in our classrooms, but we are lacking the resources, the equipment. So yes, our teachers, while they went through training, knew about differentiated learning, but something, as you just mentioned, the use of technology. So I'm at a school, and connectivity, or the lack thereof, is one of the barriers that teachers face. So there is a child is on a spectrum and they thrive when they have visual aids, when they could interact and they could see the videos, they could put on their headphones. So yes, the teachers may have the ideas, we have the ideas, we know what we should do, but there's no internet. So what can we do? And adding to this, I believe every classroom should be equipped with a projector, a printer, because right on the spot, because our teachers are flexible, and this is my first year at Vivo Secondary, but I have been at another secondary school, and teachers do they're flexible. They are able to say, well, if I had a printer right there, if I had access to internet, I could, or the child could watch a video. They could use their apps as an alternative means of communicating. But when connectivity is an issue, internet access is an issue, there is so much that you can for not just the child who is on the spectrum, but for every child, because we know that there are different learning styles, and every child thrives when they're experiencing learning and different senses are involved. It's not just, okay, chalk and talk, or some classes we only have a chalkboard, there's no whiteboard. So it's just essential. So I dream of classrooms. I'm not in a secondary school, the specialized rooms. I mean, the students that I work with, they do not need me in a specialized room. So they do building BFT, building furniture technology. They do elect their during ag and PE, they do not need me. They do not need the aid because they're using different, the information is being introduced, they're interacting in different forms, different senses are being used. So in a general class, for example, a mathematics, like Miss mentioned, her son did ag and PE. So a class like mathematics, there should be an overhead projector. There should be access to videos on YouTube's shorts, because there is no access, or very little, or poor. I don't want to say that there isn't, because students, they are given a laptop. Every child in Form 1, for instance, has a laptop, but a laptop is basically useless without access to the internet. Mm-hmm. So just students have to download from home, and whereas the teacher wants to engage them or introducing something for the first time, they're missing that opportunity. Not only the interactive board, overhead projector, access to internet, but I would love to see that, like Miss mentioned, that students do not only have a special ed teacher, because I am one in the population of almost 1,000 students at Vifford Comprehensive Secondary School. That's the population, one special ed teacher. And we have about, we have 4 students. Let's just say we have 4 students who are on the spectrum. Each child is unique. Each need is unique. But there is just so much that the special ed teacher can do. And we also have students who have dyslexia, who have dysgraphia. So there are other needs that need to be met. So an aide, an assistant, and the students thrive. So an aide, like Miss said, I love that point. Just like we had the caregivers, the home caregivers, we could train persons, to come in. The teacher is still leading with the and lesson plans, but just to give the one-on-one. I have the experience, a great experience with one of the students. In his first term, yes, he needed me. The teachers were not sure whether the tears were out of joy or if it was out of sadness. But in second term, he only had pull-out sessions a few times during the week. And it just became less because he knew now how to follow his schedule. He knew how he became independent, and his average was better than his first term. So it's not forever that they need an aid. The aim is for them to be independent, but we do need persons to assist, because one special ed teacher, a population of 1,000 students, and there are other needs. Okay, and our don't have connectivity, we do not have an overhead projector, we don't have access. So it makes the work that needs to be done seem insurmountable. Oh my goodness, we won't be able to. But it is possible if we equip all classes. Mm-hmm. So like I said, it's not just the child with autism who will benefit, every child will. Because if we have a video thing, everyone has access to it. And our aim is for quality education, for every child to access quality education.
Yeah, so we really have to factor all of these things into the budget presented to the government. Now, Divya, there's a question for you in the chat. So I see your hand is up. Melka, I will come to you after. Delia, the question is, what type of organization is HAPA registered as? And has any funding been sought to assist with the work being done? So maybe you can take that as well as your comment that you had.
Yes, so we are a registered not-for-profit NGO. That's what we are, and we were registered in 2023. We look for funding all the time. So right now, with all of the activities that we have undertaken, the Sensory Health Fair this month, the Sports Day, we have applied to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and they have given us small grants. So we do get very small grants here and there. But for what we want to do for the autistic population in Saint Lucia, we need a big grant. I have a dream that we can have an autism center in Saint Lucia. So people can come and get therapies. There'd be a pediatrician in charge. There'll be something for the adults. Autistic adults have nothing, have nowhere to go. You know, they would be offering training sessions. This is my dream, but we need the money to do that. One of the reasons my hand was up is that I wanted to show y'all my son. Oh, it might be too bright. My son's device. So my son is non-verbal. And so we call this his talker. It's just an iPad. That's all it is. And then the program is on it. So what he does is that he selects so if he's feeling, so let's say I'm seeing my son is not looking well and I'm not sure what is happening, I can ask him to press the feel button. So he'll press feel. Where's feel? And then he would say what's and then he could say how he's feeling, if he's feeling mad or if he's feeling upset. My dream is that every non-verbal autistic child have that. We do have a lot to do, Dr. Simon, but it's beginning. The awareness is there. It's going to move to acceptance and inclusion and empowerment, but it takes a village. The Ministry of Education, the Ministry for Persons with Disabilities cannot do everything. We need to solicit the other stakeholders within the communities, the organizations, the businesses to come in. Every school in St. Lucia should have a sensory room. And as Ms. Charles said, it benefits all the individuals. I mean, you should see or hear how the students or the children who came for the health fair, when they went into the sensory room, it was so popular. It calms them down, it relaxes them, because a lot of autistic individuals go through sensory overload.
Yes.
Our classrooms are not autism friendly. All of the colors that we use in the classroom, the lighting, the seating, all of that needs changing. If we could get businesses to come on board, let me sponsor a classroom. Let me sponsor a sensory room in this school. It takes a village.
Yes, thank you. Well said. And I hope that we have people who are listening or who have contacts where, you know, they can bring those ideas forward. But I think that when we engage with the government, which seems to have the good intentions, these things have to be specified, because they may not know exactly where the things should go or how they should budget for what. But I think perhaps we can begin by compiling that kind of practical list, of things. For example, simple things like just having these nonverbal children being able to feel that they are getting across. That is a major accomplishment. This makes a big difference in the child's life, as little as it might seem. Just being able to say, to press something to show I am in pain, or I am hurting, or I am, it's a major thing, but there's a cost. So that kind of itemizing, I think, is critical. We had, okay, I'm just going to take one more question before I get to the two people whose hands are up, okay? This person is asking, it's a special needs school in the person specializing in autism in Guyana and working in Guyana, and is asking what national or regional policies are currently in place to support children with autism, and how are they being monitored for effectiveness? Do we have policies? It's one thing saying, okay, we're going to give a grant, but what is the policy? What is the thing that undergirds our whole approach to dealing with it? Ms. Daniel, are you going to speak on this?
Well, yes, there are a number of things to speak on. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to try my best not to repeat, because everything that we have said so far is quite salient and it is quite effective and it's important. Yes. Currently we are working on a SEN policy. So we have a special education needs policy that the government, that we are working on. It's actually part of a project. So it came from the Pearl, under the Pearl project. And this is going to be continued under a new project coming soon in terms of funding, because we have to agree that we need funding in order to get the resources, in order to get the personnel, in order to get the equipment, in order to get everything that's necessary to get the ball rolling. We need funding for that. Currently, we do have one that we are working on, a SEN policy, okay? So in terms of what stage we're at now, we had actually brought this onto the community, to the various communities. We've had online discussions. So we've met with various stakeholders. We've discussed certain aspects of that SEN policy. A lot of it, of course, has to do with education, looking at, for example, the age of children at a particular school, and especially when it comes to the special education centers, of which we have 5 and 1 private school on island currently. So it will also provide information for the mainstream schools, that's the regular schools, as to the particular programs and services that are intended for those schools. So yes, it is on the way. Let me go back to the $17 million. That is not enough. Plainly, that is not enough. And you have made that abundantly clear. We know it must be equity focused. We know that there must be policies that have to be implemented. And we know that every policy must be made practical. And that is the problem that we have. We have a lot of policies that are sometimes made on paper, but they do not actualize. They do not come out in terms of action. And that is where the monitoring, that is where the guidance, that is where the support is needed. And so I am really happy that we're having the opportunity to speak on this. The funds, yes, they will close a gap. We are supposedly, the Viewford Special Education Center is supposed to be getting, well, we have a new school, a new building, which we have been crying out for a very long time. This, however, is a segregated special education system, because our special education school is supposed to provide special education services to those children who would not necessarily benefit from a mainstream setting. It is also intended that those children, even they do not necessarily even have to stay there with a duration or throughout their school life. There are times when the student may need to be reintegrated or integrated into the mainstream. So it is a place, I consider it a placement where we're supposed to provide some intervention, the necessary intervention for the child, and then to have that child transition, whether it be into a mainstream school or the child transitions back into society, okay, when the child becomes an adult. We have a number of programs that we run at our centers, at our various centers, the special education centers. And I can see that this is what that is needed within the mainstream. If we consider an inclusion, we don't have to necessarily recreate what we're already doing, because we already have a lot of the programs, a lot of the services. Because when we work in children with autism, And we're looking at specialized programs. We're looking at getting them aids and getting them support. This is already being done at many of the special needs schools. What we do need, however, is to have a system in place, have a strategy, have something practical that we can actually shift or transition what is happening at the special schools into the mainstream setting. All right. We have to look at what has been successful for us, because we've had a lot of successful stories at the mainstream schools. I saw somebody posted, ask a question about communication. What Dr. Samuel posted there, this is necessary when it comes to communication for children who are non-verbal. And it is actually called a PECS program, a picture exchange communication system, which provides a lot of visual support. It helps children with their processing, because the more the child is able to see, the less processing that is involved for the child, the less confusing it is for the child. So I can speak on a number of things that are already being done at our various Saint schools that can be transferred, that can be used at the mainstream schools. We just need, just give us the go ahead, and it will be done. Even in terms of designing the classroom, again, Dr. Samuel spoke about the lighting and spoke about all of those things that are necessary. Now we have to realize that this is a needs-based system when we're looking at a child with autism, because what may apply for one child may not necessarily apply for another child. And that is why assessment is paramount. Assessment is key. We had a Northern Assessment Team, an MDT team, which is a multidisciplinary team. That's the team that was solely responsible for assessing children of school age, from age 5 and upwards, all right? Right now, we have a Southern team, but the Southern team needs to be better equipped. Even the Northern team, we need better equipment. We need more testing facilities. We need more testing equipment, so that at least it's not a matter of labeling children, because I don't believe in labeling, but I believe in true assessment. So that way we can pinpoint what the child's needs are, where the child is at, and what exactly are we going to do with that child. This is where the IEP stems from. What direction are we taking with that child? That child is nonverbal. Okay, fine. This child operates using a PECS system. So now we're going to design or give this child a picture exchange communication system wherever the child is, that will help the child benefit or help the child communicate with his peers, with his teachers, and so forth. There are sensory needs. We need to discover what's the child's sensory diet, because you know our children with autism can either be hyposensitive or hypersensitive. So we need to discover what makes them tick. Right? We need to find out what behaviors, because every behavior that a child with autism shows or displays, we know this is actually communication. The child throws a tantrum, that is communication. A meltdown, that is communication. Whatever behavior is the child trying his or her best to communicate with the other person. Where we are able to use speech, they are using other bodily functions in order to communicate. All right? So we then need sensory spaces in our classrooms. So we know what is needed. We already know. We have we have a list. We can provide that list of equipment. We just need the necessary persons to come, pick this thing up and say, let's go. If we need coaches, we know that we need coaches. We know we need teacher training. And by right, every teacher should be trained in special needs or special education. Every teacher should have competent in working with children with autism or any other special need. So we know teacher training is important. We start the ball rolling. We get the necessary persons. We have persons who can train people here. We don't always have to go overseas. We don't always have to go over, go and pay how much money or be expensive in terms of what we pull from. We have resources that are right here. We can use it. We know we need occupational therapists. These are the people that we need. Physical therapists. We know we need those persons. They are vital in helping us, because we have children who sometimes they're not eating particular kinds of things, and then we need them to have a proper nutritional diet and whatever the case may be. And we have the occupational therapists that we know that is needed. So guess what? Find grants for those persons, get those persons trained. There are people who are very interested. We cannot have 1, 2, 3 speech therapists on island. This is ridiculous. We know in this 21st century, we know in 2026, we need more speech therapists. We have a lot of persons who are willing to study in those areas. Get those persons, get them in those areas. And when you get them, don't put them to work at the ministry level or send them somewhere else. Put them in the schools, because that is where they belong, in the schools, in the community. So we have persons who can do the job. Use them. All right. We also need data monitoring, and that's why I go back to the coaches. Similarly, we have numeracy coaches, we have literacy coaches, and I can say that because I worked as a literacy coach for 4 years in Sufre. So we have literacy coaches. We can have special needs coaches, persons who can help direct and monitor and provide the data and everything that is needed, just to ensure at least there is a start. That doesn't mean that we continue, but at least to initiate the process. All right, because my school culture might be different to another person's school culture. Okay, or the types of children or the kinds of children that I have are different to the particular children that you have. So then we have coaches, we have people to help us, form our teams. We can do that. All right, develop profiles of our children, and then we can see how best to educate them. So there's a lot. Expansion of services, we need that. Transition programs, let me tell you, there's a whole lot. And I will have to stop now because I can just carry on and on and on. But what I wish to say is that it is already being done. All right. Yes. I know many of us are going overseas. It is already being done. We need improvements. Yes. We probably need connections. Yes. We probably need funding. Yes. That is what we need. But let us start. We can start now.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Daniel, because we know that that passion is there and the need is great and the passion is of course equally great. We have some other comments in the chat, and somebody is saying that there's Mrs. Amina Story Edwards, who developed the Saint Lucia transition, who presented her doctoral viva last month. Dr. Samuel, you may want to take note of that. Apparently, her presentation was related to our topic, so you may want to take a note of her name so you can check on that. The other question that I wanted to raise, sorry, I'm scrolling through the chat. People are asking different things about budgets and so on. People are asking about accountability, and we've mentioned that the need for accountability to guarantee that there is consistent support for autistic learners across schools, so that we don't have inequity in allocations to schools. All of these things, I think, have to be put into whatever is going to the government in terms of need. Moving towards a more inclusive model rather than segregated systems. Now, this is a bone of contention because we're talking inclusion, but we're also talking about the fact that a lot of people are not in favor of inclusiveness in the schools. And we're coming from that old mindset, where these children are different and they shouldn't be with my children and they shouldn't be taking up space and resources from my children, who are obviously, the ones who should be having all of this. And apparently somebody's referring to teachers who are making this comment, and this is coming from teachers. Inclusion is no longer inclusion when one child's needs outweigh the right of 29 others to learn. And this is of concern. I don't think people understand that autism is a spectrum. Every autistic child is not like every other, and there's a range of, it is diverse, a range of abilities. And when people think of autism, they just think that they're going to be these totally and completely disruptive children in a classroom and nobody's going to learn. How do we deal with that sort of thing, that community perception? that I think often retards our ability to do anything. And I think, yes, Ms. James, you have been wanting to say something for a long time, so I will bounce that question over to you.
Okay, so I'm going to piggyback on what everybody else has said. We're educators, and we know some educators make some unsavourable comments. You know, they believe that why should the extra time and energy be spent on that one child who should be placed at special ed when, like was quoted, there are 29 other children. Ms. Charles has articulated it. Mrs. Daniel has articulated it. Everything that we do with an autistic child, the ordinary child benefits from. With the autistic children, you know, we have to ensure that there's no sensory overload. We have to ensure that when we speak, that our communication is clear. We provide them with visual cues. We provide them with the written cues as well. And we ensure that the instruction is differentiated for them. The ordinary child benefits from that. What I think is happening with our system is the fact that it appears that we are just seeing an increase in autistic children being asked to be part of the main school, and the preparation, the rollout for this wasn't adequately done. So the empathy that is needed, it is not in all school environments. So, for instance, at my school, I have a number of autistic children. These children are very attached to their classroom teachers. If their teacher is absent for the day, I make it my business to go and to check on that child, because I know that they would be experiencing some sort of overload, that they would need a break, a timeout. There was an instance, I took the child and we went for a walk all over the school. And she was just repeating what I was saying. And we were having our own little conversation, one words, whatnot, whatnot. But when I brought her back to the classroom, she was calm. When I went to the classroom, she was irritated. And like you said, Dr. Simon, she was locked in. She was unable to express how she felt and what she was going through. There are specifics that we as educators need to do. We look at the colors that we paint our classrooms in. We have to ensure that these colors do not trigger all students, but the colors are calm and warm and would incite the type of cognition that you want during lessons. You have to deliberately foster and change your programs to ensure that when these autistic children or even special needs children, that when they succeed, the whole school celebrates with them. So for instance, with our school sports, we ensure that every single year we have a race, and that race is run by all of our special needs children. Every single child gets a medal. They may not be the fastest at the school, but when we have our award ceremony, they're called on stage and the whole school is there cheering for them in the very same way. Just as everybody, there's the parent who would have spoken, and she spoke about the importance of pairs. We teach them empathy, treating children the way you want to be treated. So they have a buddy, they have a pair, and you see them walking hand in hand and call this person their best friend. So there is a likeness that they see in somebody else, and somebody else identifies them, somebody else looks out for them. We are where we are currently because I think we failed. We did not prepare the system for what is happening. There is a lot that has to be done, that the budgetary allocation is inadequate. I ensure that every year, since the Prime Minister has been paying fees, that I ask my special needs teacher to present me with a budget. So she's able to source items that she needs for her students. So when these children go to her in her special needs class, she has what she needs to be able to work with those students. If other teachers would come and they say, well, Miss, we need X, Y, and Z, because I know that these children have diverse needs, I make the accommodations for them because it is important. This is somebody's child. And we have to ensure that they're not left out. So this is in essence what I wanted to share. I believe that this conversation, it has just started. I'm
Yes.
very, very thankful to Dr. Samuel for initiating this conversation. There needs to be a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we will not scratch the surface this evening. But there is
Yeah.
a lot that we have to discuss to ensure that these children are properly catered for as we move along. And Dr. Samuel's dream is achievable. That dream of that center is achievable. We just have to ensure that we prioritize people, and we ensure that as much as possible, the funding, that there is equity there.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. James. People are asking whether there's any, are there any measures to identify children, where children are on the spectrum, so you can identify your high functioning individuals, as they call them, and therefore make the necessary accommodations, etc. Is that something that is routinely done in the schools, the sort of screening or whatever? Not yet. Is it coming?
Maybe Dr. I'm calling her doctor already. Yeah, Melka, I'm referring to you. I know that with the MBT process, the children are tested, but this is something that we always discuss. Special education is supposed to provide for both ends, and we rarely hear of those who are functioning at the high end. If we look at what we have to do at the school, the focus is on training. Every single teacher needs to be trained in special education, because you're not going to know just how much the child has in there unless you are adequately trained to bring that out. So we're not necessarily doing justice to it. So as it stands now, with my special needs children, the autistic children, normal curriculum, but it's amended for them. Whereas with the ordinary child, the exam would be in black and white. With my autistic student, the exam would be printed out in color, the number of questions reduced, that type of thing. But I still question as an educator as to whether or not I am doing the right thing, because we are still waiting on the IEP, which doesn't come from us, which comes from the special ed unit, that tells us what we're supposed to focus on for these children.
Because I'm just thinking about those who are at a certain point on the spectrum where it is not apparent that they are autistic. Exactly. Our regular schools have lots of autistic children, except that they do not present in the typical way that we associate with autism.
Yes.
So you have the very high functioning ones, you have, who are appearing like everybody else, but the issues are there, and they also need as much attention. There are people who are being diagnosed as adults, as Dr. Samuel pointed out about herself. She did not know she was autistic until she had her children, and then decided to get tested, and she was. How many more of people like that are in the system that, you know, just go unnoticed, but who are also suffering in one way or another, you know. Dr. Samuel, I know that we are approaching our cutoff point. And so we just have a few more minutes to go. We are meant to end at, well, we have no more minutes. We're meant to end now at 7:30. There are some hands up. I don't know if I can go ahead and ask these people to be very quick.
Yes, Dr. Simon, because we did start a little late anyway.
Okay.
So I think this is an important discussion, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Dunbar Fadler, your hand has been up a long time, so we can hear from you, and then we'll hear from Sean Dale.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. I'm a special education needs teacher, and we have spoken about a number of things. However, in speaking to the point that you raised regarding the 17 million and how it could be used, I think we need to identify specific projects. We've been talking about things about classrooms and schools and items, but we need to think of specific projects that would serve the autistic community in general. So for example, I know we've been talking about a sensory center, but what if there are several small centers in different communities as opposed to one center that could serve the different communities? And we do not need a huge budget to provide these sensory centers. There are alternatives to some of the equipment that we could use locally, that we could find locally, that we could use that would allow us to set up these centers. For example, there are gym mats that we could use as on the floor in some of the spaces. We can use mattresses, not foam mattresses, but other type of mattresses that would provide support when deep pressure, for deep pressure sensory. We have hammocks that we could use. It doesn't have to be those fancy swings that we see online. We could use a secretary's chair in one of the rooms, those spinning chairs. It doesn't have to be the one you have to order online. So there's so many alternatives that we could use to set these up locally that reduce the amount of funds, external funds required. And these would be more, this type of equipment would be even more sustainable to maintain and to replace if needed. That's one thing. We've always, every time I attend a conversation or a workshop or a discussion regarding autism, it's always about the children. We have parents of children who are autistic. They need help. They need care. They need respite care. We have then even though the adult persons with autism, they need a place to go, a place to be. So we need to have centers for that. So to me, when we're looking at the use of the 17 million, it should be spread to the point where communities are benefiting, not just schools, because in our schools, a lot of our schools, we have televisions, we have this, we have that. We can use cards. It's true, it's technology and we're high on in technology, but we can use, there are other augmentative and alternative forms of communication that we can develop and use using cards and different things like that. We do not always have to go and buy the expensive device, which would still allow communication. Yes, the expensive device would be awesome and it would be great to have, but we are just starting. This is like the first disbursement we're going to get of 17 million. It cannot do everything. So we have to prioritize where we want this to go and how it's going to be used. And I think specific projects, that's something the group, the HAPA and everybody else who are so excited about autism, I am, and special needs, we need to sit together and identify the specific, most important projects that will benefit communities. So if they're like how we have these community centers, is there an area in the community where we can have a sensory a sensory center, so all the students, the children in, let's say for argument's sake, Entrepot or Marsha Entrepot Waterworks Road can go. Parents can take them there for sensory stimulation, etc. This is kind of I am thinking, as opposed to be, individual. Maybe later on we can get into the schools and everything else, but we need to look at the older population of persons with autism. We need to look at the parents who have to deal with this every day. What respite care do they have? So a respite care center, I think some years ago, Marcy and somebody else did it at the Marigo School. They had a respite care, I think mostly for cerebral palsy, they do that. But we need to do that for other disabilities, other neurodiversity too. So these are some of the things that I'm thinking about, and I'm hoping it will, what I'm saying makes sense to everybody else, and it could be implemented.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. It makes a lot of sense. The support centers, I think, are a very critical need. And perhaps this is where we can engage the business community. I think, Dr. Samuel, you had said that there was some interest from certain business entities, and they were asking, for specifics in terms of things that they could possibly do. So I think the idea of making that list is a good one, and spreading to the communities, of course, in ways that that are more far-reaching than simply focusing only on supporting the schools, because the parents do need a lot of support. So parental support centers, I think, are key things that we should look at. There was a question about whether there's a register of autistic students. I don't know if such a thing exists, and how children are assessed. Is there, regular assessment? I think we mentioned that. Is there registered? Does anybody know?
I can talk about that. I actually just gave a talk about that today.
Okay.
So in Saint Lucia, the autism rates are right now a little more than 1 in 60. As of, I wish I had the table to share with you right now.
1 in 60, 60?
But this is conservative. As of 2024, the number of autism cases was 427. 2025 was 460. The cases are rapidly increasing, the number of cases, and there is a long waiting list. But why is this conservative? Because this number is from the Child Development and Guidance Center. That is where people go to be diagnosed with autism. The pediatricians, when the parents go to pediatricians, the pediatricians send the children there. However, other places are diagnosing children with autism. So the psychologists are diagnosing, and these numbers are not added to that count. There are also many autistic individuals in Saint Lucia walking around undiagnosed. So this number, according to CDGC, is very conservative. So we need to have a measure in place where we can get the exact number of autistic individuals in Saint Lucia and get them the support that they need.
So this is a project all by itself.
Exactly.
It's like a sort of census project.
Exactly.
That we need to engage in. So that has to be separately funded as well. So as we keep saying, 17 million is really not, is it 17 million EC dollars? That is no money to speak of. It is really a drop in the bucket, because there are so many sub-projects that need to be done. And I think that the census project is very important, because we need to know what exactly are we dealing with on the ground. Is it 1 in 60? Is it 1 in 10? What is it? What are the numbers? And then you need the breakdown in terms of gradation, so that from that you begin to look at what you actually need in terms of facilities and so forth. Sean Dale, is there a question from you still? Because we really have to start winding down.
Yes, good evening, and thanks for accepting me all the way from Guyana to share my little viewpoint. As I'm listening on the last note before I go further, what Saint Lucia needs to have is a disability commission whereby every person that is being diagnosed with autism or any other disability must be registered to that commission so that St. Lucia would have an accurate number of persons that is living with disabilities, with the various disabilities. That is one. The other aspect I want to talk about, there is a lot of work to be done as I'm listening in St. Lucia. I know it's something new that y'all are dealing with, but there is a lot of work to be done and to finish putting in place. For one, the teachers, I think y'all have a training college over there. That needs to be modified, the whole entire curriculum for, if it's for us, we have the Sarah Potter College of Education, whereby they should have special needs program into the curriculum there at the Teachers Training College, and teachers must be should be part of the program. And maybe, but you would not probably allow every person to may not want to get into the program, because, working with special needs children isn't easy. I can tell you, I'm a special needs children specialized in autism, and some days it can be very draining, but you have to know how to deal with them and try to understand them. And another thing.
Can I just interrupt a little bit, because we are really short of time, and I would like to really ensure that the St. Lucians on the call, because this is dealing specifically with us, can jump in. But we do appreciate your suggestion. We do have a teachers training college, and special education is certainly part of the curriculum. So you may not know a considerable amount about what happens in St. Lucia, but what we're doing is trying to ensure that we are more fine-tuned and that we are actually moving on. It's not a new thing at all. Special education has been around for a long time, and we've been dealing with it through this association. Okay, so thank you very much. We appreciate your tuning in, and but we need to wrap up very shortly.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we have, Delia, can we take any more questions from the chat? I think we have dealt with a number of, I tried to group a number of them. We talked about the register, teachers, education, support services, how accessible are they? And somebody was asking you in particular, Dr. Samuel, how you did your evaluation, and whether there's any for adults available in the society.
Okay, I did put a reply to that, but I did it in the US and with a psychologist. It's quite, I don't like to use the word intrusive, but it made me go deep into my life with pages, a whole packet of material and questions. And then I went to a psychologist, and I was in there for 2 hours, and they interviewed my family because they had to see who I was as a child. I believe there are psychologists in St. Lucia. I'm sure Dr. Aretha Cooper, I don't think she's here tonight, but I'm sure she is one who can do that diagnosis as an adult.
Yes, yes, I know she does. Yes, she does that diagnosis.
Yeah.
From what I know of her. And Yes, of course. Somebody is mentioning that we keep saying 17 million and it's not only for autism. This is the point. By the time you break the 17 million into the bits of the large pie that we have, of which autism is only a very small part, there's really not much money there. So this is why I'm saying, and I want to really belabor that point, that we need to engage our commercial community.
Yes.
You know, we need to ensure that we are having the kinds of projects that are accessible and palatable to our commercial community so that they know, okay, we can get behind this. So if is it a center, they may want to put their name on the center, that's fine, you know, because they will want to get something out of it as well. But I think we have to begin a more bartering approach, a more aggressive, almost commercially oriented approach, because there's no way that we can get the amount of money from government that we would like with all of the competing needs. You know, and I want to keep putting in that plug for support for parents. That is a very important point. And I know that Claret is smiling at that as well. Yes, and I think that we have covered a lot of the key things that people raise, and I see, Delia, you've been answering some people. So the point is made that it's not only about support for the schools and the children in the schools, but support for the duration of an autistic person's life. Thank you for the person who made that, who pointed that out. It is for the duration, because we're not only talking about kids. So I think we have arrived at the end of our allotted time. We are really 15 minutes, 20 minutes over our allotted time. And unfortunately, we can't just keep going indefinitely. Are there any pressing final remarks from any of our panelists?
May I?
Certainly.
Okay, so
very quickly.
Yes. Firstly, I want to emphasize the point that communication between home and school is paramount, because it is one child in different settings, and it will create that consistency that is very crucial for the formation of the children. And I'm speaking about those who are at secondary school, who are at the level where I'm at. The more we equip, the more we expose, the more we are consistent. What's happening at home is happening at school, it's being mirrored. They do become independent. Yes, we know that at different levels, but our aim is to not, I always say that to all students, I'm happy when you don't need me. So that is the aim, that we have our independent, we equip them with enough tools to be able to maneuver in society, to make decisions. So I want to reemphasize this point, that there must be communication. And just as Miss said, we have some brilliant persons who are getting the results. Maybe they don't publish it, maybe they don't share it. But if we have a point of reference like the centers, we can mirror that in our schools. Like I said, it's not just for the child with autism. We can create the same spaces or similar. I mean, I have a very small space, and everybody who comes in there, I tell them a little is enough for jar, because that's my logo. And I use the space so that even if it is small, that I considered you. I'm intentional. Even though it is a classroom, there is a space that says, this is where I could come. And all students, it's their envy. Everybody wants to come to that room, because the senses are all involved. It takes a community. It takes a community. That's why we need that communication between home and I have always posted this. I have this as a permanent post pinned on my social media, that corporate citizens can adopt a classroom. It doesn't have to even come 70 million. What you need is to make this a more sensory friendly space, so all children can benefit. Local spaces, persons could volunteer to come in. It is just your time, and students, you may never know their interest. If a mechanic comes in and there's a point of interest, so much learning could happen from that. Just knowing, the more we know, the more confident we are, the more results we
Yes.
Yes.
So that is something that we have to certainly coordinate. A
So
final
since
remark.
about inclusion, sorry,
Yeah.
it's continuous commitment. It's not just for some of us, but for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your final remarks. Claret, any final remarks from you?
Yes, hi, thank you, Dr. Simon. I just wanted to say, I think I heard earlier, I'm not sure if it's one of the panelists, I think it's Ms. James, who spoke about the IEPs having to come from the special ed unit. I think that that it should be collaborative. I think that there should be some parental input. I think that they should have some input from the school. So I don't think that it should just be from the special ed unit. That's the one thing. I also wanted to point out that that I've read about two separate businesses being run by people with autism in the US. One is a pizza shop, and the other is a car wash. So that is something that we can also look forward to doing. I do know that there is a hydroponics place in somewhere in the south, the, and so we can replicate something like that, but with children, with young adults with autism. So there's scope for us to look and grow. I do not want to take up too much of the time because I know we are well over, but I want us to look at, and I agree with the person who spoke about that autistic children do not remain small. They grow up to be adults. And so I have a 27-year-old, and so we have to find things for them to do, you know.
Yes.
And so that is my contribution, my final contribution.
Yeah, that's an important point. Yes. And finally, Melka, any your quick closing remarks?
Yes. Autism is beautiful. You hear that? Autism is beautiful. And from our center, we don't see autistic children. We see children. And we don't seek to cure children. We seek to understand and support them. And if everybody holds that in high regard, to create a space where our children can learn, can grow, can thrive, can belong, that's just it. So many times when you can't work with a child with autism is because you have not understood that child. You have misunderstood that child. So it is a matter of understanding and supporting. They are beautiful children. They are talented. They are gifted. I mean, they are amazing. They are neurodiverse. They have in other words, their brains have certain variations and they go certain places that we can only dream of going. So all we need to do is to tap into that and provide the necessary support for them. Autism is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a very appropriate, very apt closing remark from you. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for being here. And I will just do a quick wrap up. I think this evening's discussion has added significant grist to the mill, as the saying goes. It has spotlighted just how much work is to be done for one of the most vulnerable and underserved groups in our population. But as always, discussions like these are never enough, because for many, understanding neurodivergence is a steep learning curve. And we also have to factor in that education of the general population. We come from a history that has taught us to denigrate what we don't understand or what we are afraid of. We have to understand those feelings in the general population. So we engage in othering, in trivializing, in dehumanizing those who we perceive as different. Parents go unsupported. Why? Because the unspoken attitude is, oh, well, it's their issue, their problem, not my business. Maybe they must have done something wrong, you know, and they didn't eat properly, so the child came out wrong. People say these things, and we shrug and we move on, completely forgetting the Sunday or Saturday sermons that remind us that every soul, every human life is equally valuable, regardless of the differences in brain or body functioning. We parrot this slogan, every child matters, but do we ever think of the full scope of its implications? So when we are parading the streets in support of our preferred political candidates, this is one thing that we need to demand of them. How will you make a commitment to every single soul who is born in this country so that every child can be promised a life that is as great as the hidden potential which is being left unlocked because we do not consider certain groups a priority? What practical operative steps will you take, Mr. Politician, if we elect you, to build a robust, inclusive system that embraces the truism that every child matters? So I just wanted to stick that in there. And at this point, I would like to thank our panelists for their presentations and their interventions at this evening's panel, as well as their dedicated work towards getting us to a point where we understand the need to eliminate the existing discrimination against certain members of our society. Special thanks to Dr. Delia Samuel, for her indefatigable work as champion for autistic individuals. I honestly think that we probably need to make lots of Delia clones, because we desperately need a lot of people with that same drive, energy, and commitment towards bringing people together to enable all our children to live their best lives. And I would like to thank you, our audience, for having made the effort to join us this evening and participate in our discussion. We never have enough time, of course, but I'm sure that you have all made that personal pledge to support the work of HAPA. So I thank you for this, and I would like to wish everyone a good night and see you soon at the next event. Over